In this video, let's interpret every coefficient independently and see if it makes sense. So let's start with the constant. The constant tells us 10.5 is the coefficient and the p-value is 0.00, meaning that it is significant. Now remember, even though a constant is significant, it only makes sense to interpret if it has a logical meaning. So in this case, the constant is telling us that is the average cigarette consumption of an individual per day if he has no income and no education. Would that make sense? Well, yes. He's probably someone who lives on social welfare, who doesn't have anything, and that's how much he affords, 10.5 cigarettes per day. Yeah, it would make sense to interpret it like that. I think it's logical. Now we go to education, same step. We look at the p-value, 0.03. That's less than 5%, less than 0.05. So we know it's significant. Now how do we interpret the coefficient? Minus 0.347. Well, that's telling us that the more educated the person is, so if the person has one more year of education increases by 1 year, the average cigarette consumption per day of that individual is going to decrease by minus 0.35. So it decreases by 0.35 cigarettes per day. So what we can see is that if a person is more educated, he's likely to consume less cigarettes because he would know that cigarettes are not good to consume, and that's why he would make that decision. That's kind of the highlight. We go to the dummies. Now remember, the dummies we interpret relative to the reference category, and we said the reference category is when income is less than $10,000. So when income is more than $25,000, the cigarette consumption goes up by 3.33 cigarettes per day, and that's an average effect. Not for every individual, but on average in the entire population, right? This is a representation of what happens in the population. Let's write over here. When income is greater than 25K, then the average, the cigarette consumption increases by 3.33 cigarettes per day on average. Relative to what? Relative to when income is less than $10,000 per year, I'm sorry. So what that means is when someone has more money, right, above 25K a year, he affords more cigarettes, so that's why he can smoke more. And on the other side, when the income is between 10 and 25, so when income is between 10 and 25K, the coefficient tells us that the cigarette consumption increases by 2.9 cigarettes per day. So it increases by 2.9 cigarettes per day on average, right? This is the estimate that happens on average in the population. Relative to what? Relative to when the income is less than $10,000. So again, they do have more money, but they do have less money than at above 25,000. So the cigarette consumption increases slightly less, only by 2.9 compared to 3.3 than before. And one more thing, I forgot to say about the p-value. They're both significant. We actually touched that in the previous video. But anyway, it's first step, let's look at the p-value. They are significant, and then we look at the numbers to see what the interpretation is. Anyway, hope this all makes sense, and we're done.